Hello, I'm Max Landis.
And I'm Chris Flail.
And this is Three Men, No Brain, which is a little podcasty discussion type experiment talking over professional wrestling's more philosophical and meta-narrative aspects. And we're going to get into it today, even though we're only two men here today due to Casanova Valentine having slept through this podcast. Love you, Big Cass. Circle 6 for life. Let's get into it. Okay.
Nice
Chris,
to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. We met maybe 7 minutes ago.
Yes.
Welcome to you and the whole world to Three Men, No Brain. But I was going back and forth because see how I did a squared circle there?
Nice.
And right now we only have 2 men.
That's right.
So we're almost at negative brain.
For all we know, the third man has the brain and we got to change the name.
The third man has the brain and our job is to kill him.
That's right.
Find him and kill him.
Yeah.
So Chris, will you tell me a little about yourself?
Sure. I guess I'll just start. So I moved out to California in 2014. I'm a Pennsylvania small town boy. So always wanted to live in California. I don't know if that's a small town thing or an East Coast thing or something.
American thing.
An American thing. And so my graduating high school class was 82 kids. And so each year, maybe one group of buddies moves out to California and then they blow all their money and they're home in 6 months.
Yes.
So I took the longer route where I went to school and then went to law school. And when I was in law school, I found my way out to California in 2014. I moved to Bakersfield, which California doesn't always recognize as part of California.
California doesn't seem to notice most things east or
That's
north.
Right. That's exactly right.
As important or interesting places.
I've always said anything east of Colorado better be New York if you're here.
It's tough, yeah.
So I lived there for 7 or 8 years and kind of got to the point where I'm a small town boy, so small town city was great for me. And I started doing comedy right around 2014 as well. I started doing stand-up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then carried it out here. So did that for 7 or 8 years and felt like I had gotten to kind of as large as it was going to go in Bakersfield. So I moved to Sacramento for a year, and then I actually lived here in Los Angeles for about a year and a half.
Map.
Did the whole thing. Yep. And while I was here, I kind of recognized that my own path was going to be different, that I would probably have to try to build it on my own. I'm not a good networker. I didn't have the time schedule because I have a day job to stand on like the Hollywood Improv patio and all that stuff. So I thought, well, I'll go back to creature comforts at home and I'll give it the real shot. And right around then is when I started putting stuff on Instagram, and for the last 2 years or so I've been doing that.
It's crazy that you were a lawyer though.
Yeah, technically still am licensed, but not practicing.
David Otunga's
with the life. That's right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
So my quick run up is I'm a screenwriter.
Yeah,
I actually grew up in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
I'm from a entertainment industry family. And I circled my way back to being a screenwriter. There have been wild ups and downs for 15 years. I've been a wrestling fan the whole time.
Yeah.
I left LA for a long time. So whenever I meet someone like you who came from the outside world to try to crack into entertainment in any way in Los Angeles or California in general, my respect for them is like way up there because I've been in the entertainment industry my whole life and it doesn't make sense and it's not fair. And it's not egalitarian, and it's not a meritocracy. Like everything else is secretly not egalitarian, a meritocracy. We kind of pretend that it is because otherwise we're going to shoot ourselves.
Right.
But I've been impressed just how much, in terms of social media, how many people I know. I always say that success in the entertainment industry is having 2 people talking about your work who aren't you.
Yeah.
And who you didn't just tell.
Yeah.
And if that snowballs and there's more and more people talking about your work, eventually one of them will have money. And what I love about sort of the social media aspect of the entertainment industry and comedy is it's become egalitarian.
Yes.
Via, a lot of the jokes you make about wrestling on your page, people wouldn't get those.
Right.
But to people who get them,
yes,
it's the funniest fucking thing in the world.
You're so right. If I'm at a show or at an open mic and I tell a wrestling joke, 4 people might get that joke.
Exactly.
Or you can get to millions. Yeah. Incredible.
I once knew a woman who was the daughter of a famous director, but she said something that at the time I thought was really funny. And I have come to think of it as something an evil princess says, even though she's quite a nice person. It was a point of privilege that was so funny where we were running into a bunch of struggling writers and directors at a party who wanted to talk to us. And on the way home, she said, I feel like if you move to LA, you should have to have a visa. And if you don't have a job within the entertainment industry in 4 years, you have to go back to Kentucky. And I thought, me driving the car at that time thought, ha, 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 ha. But
so true.
So true. But me 11 years later is like, ooh.
Right.
So many of my friends or people I know or great artists took 10 years to break, or,
Sure.
And people don't have, like you said, the luxury of time.
Right.
The luxury of, because entertainment industry isn't just about, can I get my big shot? Can I do the work? It's, do I have time to try to take my big shot or do the work? Do I have time to socially position myself in ways that I'll talk to people who would enjoy my art?
Yeah.
Because people constantly talk about like networky and brown nosing and shit like that. But what they don't realize is we don't make widgets.
Right.
We don't make plastic cups that have a measurement. So art is totally subjective. There is no such thing as objectively good art, right? So it's always going to be a matter of showing your stuff to the right people. And if that's socially or if that's online, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Being a famous director's kid can lead to a big career or nothing, but often it leads to the same amount as having gotten lucky and met someone who gave you one little opportunity, because no one's ever going to give you a big opportunity.
Right.
They're going to give you a series of little ones.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm unking right now.
No, I appreciate it. These are all the things I was going to ask you as we were getting to know each other. So you spoke to it already, that you're right, especially in entertainment, the road to success is so obscure. Like for me, again, I'm a lawyer, and as soon as I got licensed as an attorney, I immediately had less faith in doctors, because I knew how little I knew and still passed, and the state has stamped me as qualified to help represent someone with their livelihood on the line, and I know just how much I didn't know, and I know when I took the bar exam, when I went home, how I was like, oh, there's no way that I passed that. But at least there's the road, okay, I go to school for 4 years, then I go to school for 3 more years, I do some clerkships, I take this test. When I take this test, the state says I am qualified to do this, as opposed to, you're right, you can be screaming into a dark alley for years.
30 years.
Yeah. Or you can, like Ashton Kutcher style, you could have been out here a month and a half, and the whole world has been presented to you.
Or Elijah Wood style.
I don't know that story.
You are a young actor, you're 6, and you book a lucky role, and you don't even remember when you weren't famous.
Yeah, that's right.
There's Samuel L. Jackson style, kick around in Hollywood for 40 years till you're in Coming to America as a robber, and you're so memorable the way you yell that now you're 80 or something and you're having the biggest run of your career.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I've invited you here because I think the narrative art form of professional wrestling is the most understudied, undercritiqued, sort of generally accepted, and yet most successful form of straight up outsider performance art that exists in the modern media landscape. I think wrestling is, some people compare it to comics, some people compare it to theater. People who don't watch it a lot say it's like a soap opera for men, or it's like it's gay, or whatever the most simple, superficial observations about it are. Yeah. When in reality, professional wrestling as an art form, and specifically the cultural bastion of professional wrestling, the WWF/E, they're paragons of entertainment, and WWE is not a Disney level company, but certainly a Disney styled company that had a creative mandate and all these different things.
But so the thing that really has always gotten my goat about professional wrestling is the assumptions inherent to watching it. I never heard of carnism. Oh. Carnism is a philosophical idea that the only reason we are able to exist sanely in our culture is because, even though we don't know it, we're in a carnist cult.
Yeah.
You and I are a carnist cult, which presupposes that some animals are food and some animals are alive. So you never see a giant factory in Texas where they kill 50,000 doms a day.
Yeah.
But cows, we make a line. We draw a line, even though the intelligence levels are not that dissimilar. Say we've kids who are smarter than dot. We concentration get them, but because we've made, and this is also, we're not going to be political in this, but this is the argument between conservative and liberal rather than Democrat, Republican, is what matters in my life, what can I directly affect? versus what affects everyone around me and what might affect the world in ways that I don't immediately understand. So it is on that note that I want to pose your question, and we'll start kicking it apart. Professional wrestling, even though it seems divided across several companies, many companies, hundreds, but really 10, and mainly 2, and really mainly 1. Professional wrestling does not take place in our reality.
In and out simultaneously in a strange way.
Oh, okay. Is it our reality? Because this is the next question I want to. Oh, but where would you say your current level of fandom / knowledge is of professional wrestling in general?
I would say, I wouldn't say expert, and it's only because I'd picked it back up probably 4 or 5 years ago. So I watched it religiously as a kid, dropped it for a little while, picked it back up 4 or 5 years ago. But I'm, every Monday, every Friday, every pay-per-view, highlight clips from the NXT, highlight clips from Sunday Independence when they come through my algorithm. But I'm probably 5-6 hours of wrestling viewing per week.
That's neat, by the way. Yeah. What's your current level of interest / investment in AEW?
Low investment. If it's on, I'll watch it right now. But that's actually what brought me back in. And it was when Punk went to AEW, I kind of like the little punk rock organization coming back now. And then as it started to drift, kind of the same as what I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania. So I was big into ECW as a kid because I would see the public access commercials and all that stuff. But then when the big conglomeration took it over, it drifted me into it. Kind of the same thing on AEW. I and somewhat embarrassingly have not watched as much of it as I should.
I'm someone who's watched a crazy amount of AEW. Wrestling often includes magic. It includes the human body within wrestling.
Hits that you couldn't take in real life. You can get pile driven and not die, and in fact get up and do a springboard stunner later in that same match, or a moonsault. Moves in which a person leaps and inverts their body and then crashes down ribs first onto someone, hurt the person on bottom more than the person on top. Sure. There's all these things we accept about it, right? Because it's not our reality, yeah?
Right.
Are they all in the same reality? Because I would say yes. I would say most of them, except for like Chikara.
The way I'm looking at it is, I know from a spectator, I feel like we float in and out of the reality. We simultaneously are suspending our disbelief to believe the characters and believe the moves and believe the injuries, while simultaneously winking and nodding at all of the, you see it especially now in WWE and SmackDown. We'll sing along to Seth Rollins' song, then boo, then collectively chant Seth freaking Rollins and cheer, then boo, and then we break kayfabe and come back.
Yep.
Mid-sentence.
Well, that's one of the most interesting things is when you watch wrestling, you're kind of watching it as two people.
Yes.
You have been split instantaneously. And this is true live, too, because the crowd is the music of wrestling. It is the score and the sound design and the special effects. It's also the set.
Yeah.
The people behind people are the set. We are characters as soon as we enter a wrestling arena. But we also kind of watch in character. Like you're saying, we watch it as a person who is watching Game of Thrones. Like, this is real. This is a show, and I'm a person on Game of Thrones. And I'm watching Jon Snow fight the White Walker and all that. And I'm one of them, and I don't like the bad guy, and I like the good guy. But then behind us in our brains, we're sort of going, wow, it's great how Bryan Danielson can control the pace of this match and the storytelling, and he's so talented. And even while he's being like choked to death or crushed, we're like, God, he's a great performer.
Yeah.
And we kind of know it's all not real. So it doesn't take place in our reality. But the more specific of the question, and thank you, this is exactly what I wanted.
Oh, good.
Is Marvel and DC take place in two different realities, right? Both of those realities are separate from ours, but they're also distinct from each other.
Yeah.
Wrestling, I think, as far as I can tell, most of it now takes place in one reality. Like characters like a CM Punk will remember things that happened to them in WWE.
Yeah.
And because of the bizarre and incoherent refusal until very recently to even acknowledge the other wrestling promotions.
Yes.
They leave a lot of story meat on the table sometimes by not going, hey, these two guys know each other.
Right.
But at the same time, in that continuity, we're supposed to kind of forget things like Randy Orton punting John Cena's father, right? Yeah. Like if someone punted your father, I have a hard time, and I'm all about forgiveness, and I'm all about moving forward. If someone in an effort to win a sports competition with me pulled my father out of the crowd and punted him,
yes,
that person would be dead to me for maybe life.
Yes.
It would be hard for me to imagine a world in which I'm like, I respect the hell out of you.
And we, as listeners to your story, I would never, if you retold me the story and then told me about a recent event, I would never say to you, I can't believe you hit that guy with a belt.
Yeah.
How could you have done that? I know he punted your father, but that was years ago.
Well, that was for a minute, that was like Kevin Owens' character, was that he was the only person who remembered continuity.
Yes.
And yet, even within that, you look at a Sami Zayn, and now we're talking about a sort of a topic I want to do later, but the idea of how these characters exist moment to moment is super interesting when you actually look at it, because Sami Zayn's a fucking worm.
Yeah.
He's a piece of shit. Like, he has yet to do anything to address the fact that for like 3 years, he was a cheating, violent, insidious rat whose entry into the bloodline, which made him beloved, was a vile little creep trying to get power and backup and appropriating Samoan culture and expecting a fist dap from guys who run the industry. And then we feel bad for him. I maintain at that last pay-per-view before, I forget what it's called, before WrestleMania 2 years ago, a year ago, when it was Sami in Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
I maintain he should have fucking kicked Roman Reigns in the balls and won at the end, and then come out on a speech the next night and be like, I was right. You were all wrong. You cheering me didn't matter.
Yeah.
None of this mattered. And then triple threat with Cody for the belt.
Yeah.
And
embrace your essence.
Acknowledge the reality.
There are really only two guys that remind him of that, and they're both heels. Karrion Kross and Seth Rollins.
How often have there been moments? Okay, we're coming back around. That's great. How often have there been moments in the last 25 to 30 years where professional wrestling's writing, because it is a mono-narrative created by a series of 3 billionaires and arguably 5 creatives.
Sure.
Like, you can look at WWE and it's like looking into a window into Vince McMahon's mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Every dark thing about him, his desire to say the N-word, his desire to degrade women, all of these things are open book. And he was final word on all these things.
Yep.
That said, he's also like a Walt Disney level creative genius.
And marketing genius.
And a marketing genius. And so what's interesting is when you look at something like the Yes Movement or RVD getting the title, stuff like that shows that he is ultimately a genius.
Yes.
Except the world he's created is a dystopia.
Yeah.
This is my feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Professional wrestling is a cyberpunk sci-fi fantasy. This is its genre. No one says this.
Yeah.
But WWE is a cyberpunk sci-fi fantasy show about a company in which there are professional fighters who fight each other in a ranked system where we don't see the numbers and we are encouraged to forget them.
Right.
So already that's dystopic.
Great
Your
point.
wins and losses don't really matter.
Sure.
Where clear cheating is not only not fined, even though it's being broadcast internationally, it is congratulated.
Yes.
In fact, people within this corporation, people who should be bound by contracts and laws and all sorts of things, instead, occasionally choose one of the fighters as their chosen person and then manipulate the entire world against them.
Within a public corporation, they have fiduciary duties.
Yeah, you're a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah.
Think about how insane what other corporate world is there?
Yeah.
That is this. I mean, are all corporations kind of like this? Is that?
Boy, that's a great question.
Because Triple H is like an executive. Vince McMahon is an executive.
Yeah.
But they're violating people.
I think wrestling is really everything to the hilt. Everything, for lack of a better reference, on steroids, figuratively and oftentimes literally.
Right.
So again, I graduated law school in 2014, and I spend most of my time focusing on trying to make a living as a clown. So I have not necessarily scaled the corporate ladder the same way that some of my friends have. But I've got friends that are starting to move upward in corporate life. I will say that the further glimpses my friends and colleagues get, the more high schoolish it tends to be, and how much more manipulative and small and unprofessional some of the decisions are made that you would never guess. I do, however, think that WWE is a world unto its own, but I love that you mentioned the Yes Movement, because one of the really cool things, and don't let me digress this too much, but one of the really cool things that I like is, as you said, as spectators, we're the set, we're the music. Every now and then, we take the company from them, Daniel Bryan style, and say, no. At least for a little while, you can take it back away from us in 6 weeks, but at least right now, this is all going to change. I feel like partly of what happened with Vince was due to that. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of succession things going on.
Oh, I'm sure.
Behind closed doors, but
there was clearly some cloak and dagger.
Yeah, I mean the ascension of the Divas division from what it used to be in the Sable and Sunny days to what it is now, where they're the most admired female professional athletes, I would argue, of any sport.
The thing about wrestlers is they're rock stars and pop stars, right? Like, have you met a lot of wrestlers?
No, not a ton.
I've met a crazy amount. Now, that's a weird flex, but like...
That's a cool flex. Yeah.
Well, what's fascinated me about meeting wrestlers is a few of them are like meathead guys.
Okay.
Like former athletes who are just doing their job. And then the majority of the ones I meet, men and women, are these like oddball people.
Yeah.
They are, there's a legitimate strangeness to them in the same way that there's a legitimate strangeness to a lot of successful musicians.
They're artists.
Artists in general.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about the Dystopia, because I want to know your read on this.
Yeah.
When we look at WWE, it describes itself as a sports entertainment company. And wrestling was a dirty word until recently.
Right.
But TKO does UFC, which is a real combat company.
Mm-hmm.
Within the fictional world of wrestling, is it an entertainment company? And if so, is a person being handcuffed while someone kisses their unconscious wife? Let's say Triple H, Randy Orton. That being broadcast to the whole world. So imagine if you were at a musical festival. Mm-hmm. And during the music festival, the lead singer of one band walked onto a stage, smacked the other guy's wife with a guitar, dragged her on stage, handcuffed the first guy, and then bent down and kissed her in front of him, in front of a giant crowd and in front of the whole world. There would be consequences for that of some kind.
Tremendous, yeah.
Randy Orton, I don't believe, even received a fine.
No.
And that was a physical assault on 3 different executives in that segment.
Right.
So do we feel that within wrestling, is there an assumption that they've all signed? What would be the contract that's like, you can hurt me if you want?
Yeah.
Because how many assaults do we witness?
Tons. And it is interesting that it seems to get the benefit of the doubt in both worlds. It gets more slack than your typical artist, like you said, if you were at a concert and that happened. Yeah. But also it gets more entertainment slack than your typical fighters would. Because now I will say, like you said, TKO has the UFC. When 2 fighters are promoting a fight, they're allowed to climb down into the gutter like no other athletes or entertainers are allowed. They're allowed.
In real life.
I mean, personal insults, racial slurs. If you watch the promo to a big fight, all goes out the window. I mean, throwing things at each other, potential, as long as no one's injured, assaults at the weigh-ins and things like that. Like if you watch the more contentious UFC fight buildups or a big boxing match buildup, all of that is on the table. Same thing in WWE, but also you get this creative expression where you can do completely,
evil things.
Even at that, a build up to a UFC fight, if one chained up the other and assaulted his wife,
Yeah.
that would be it.
Consequence.
That would be it.
But in the world of in the other reality,
we get to put on the theater hat and go, no, we were just athletes a minute ago. Yes, I hit him with the sledgehammer, but now I'm an actor.
well, so that's my question is, if it's real, how am I supposed to feel about Randy Orton?
Yeah.
As me.
Yeah.
Is my enjoyment of him, there are many figures who I still listen to Michael Jackson's music.
Sure.
I am not terrified to engage with that art.
Yeah.
But if there was a guy who was a former world champion who had broken into people's houses, punted old men, pushed people down the stairs,
Yeah.
and on TV during one match had what appeared to be a full-on nervous breakdown during the last man standing match, I wouldn't be okay with him even working for the company.
Yeah.
But I would be interested in real life to see what that guy was doing now.
Right.
So do you see what I'm saying? It's hard to explain. It's like even when you watch it, to engage with the world, you have to accept, when people say wrestling isn't real, it's like you have to accept that to even watch 10 minutes of it.
That's right. You have to, it's not fake, but it's also not real, but simultaneously is. But it just takes, to 1,000. Everything in life, in my opinion, it takes to 1,000, including the complications and gray areas of people. Again, don't let me trail us off too far, but this, oddly enough, this just happened to me yesterday. So in Bakersfield, they have an ESPN radio, local ESPN station. And so every other Friday, I go do a segment with these guys that have a show on ESPN radio. So I pull up, I wait outside when they're on a commercial break, they come and get me and I pop in. So I was outside the radio station for maybe 4 minutes. I pull up to the door and I see a truck pull up behind me. And so I step away because, like you said, we're taller guys. I don't want to be imposing. I don't want them to think I'm going to sneak in behind them.
You're a big guy.
Or thank you. I appreciate that.
He looks like Karrion Kross with short hair.
I'm coming. Anything you ever want to record, I'm back now. But so I take a step back so they don't think I'm going to try to bully my way in when they go in. But I take a look. I turn around and I look and I said, Carlos? It was Carlos Mencia.
What?
Just standing at the radio station on the curb in Bakersfield.
I thought you said you weren't good at that.
7:45 in the morning. I just looked and I said, Carlos? And it was Carlos Mencia. And he's yeah. And I said, hey, thanks for coming to Bakersfield, man. And I shook his hand. Now, if you know the backstory with Carlos Mencia, he is the comedy pariah for the joke stealing and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
All of that, there's a lot of validity in there. All that, a lot of valid stuff in there. I also have spoken to a couple of people who have featured for him on the road, and one or two of them, by their accounts, they were treated pretty poorly by him.
Jesus.
However, so if you talk to 100 people that know Carlos Mencia, probably 98 to 99 of them are going to be right along the lines of that story. But I've gotten a peek behind the curtain, and he's been coming to Bakersfield for a few years. He came to a venue that I played at quite a bit. I know that he had his publicist set up interviews all over local Bakersfield radio stations that anybody else would have been too big to do. And he was going to sell out his shows anyway, but he did it just to ingratiate himself into the town. I also know that he was playing a brewery that had poor sound issues, and he showed up 6 hours before the show, and he rewired the brewery's sound. He did 2 shows, did a meet and greet with every single person, like 300 some people in between both shows, and gave all that to the audience just to play some rinky-dink brewery in Bakersfield. So again, if you talk to 100 people, they say, oh yeah, Carlos, he sucks, he steals, he's a jerk, he's all this stuff. I know this thing. I don't know if is it a 3% sliver of who he is or a 50% sliver of who he is. He doesn't know I know it, but I know it. This gray area of humanity. It's really, you're never going to have good and bad. And I think wrestling is that on steroids.
If somebody punted my dad, he's bad.
He's bad for you. Forever.
If he punted, well, I'm even more. I'm not a Kant guy. I'm kind of a Nietzsche guy.
Okay.
I think bad people are incredibly rare.
Yes.
In my experience, and most of the people I've met who I dislike the most, either professionally or personally, the vast majority of them, I'm like, oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. Because also, I know lots of people dislike me, but I'm very easy to like if you meet me.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, if I do say so myself, and
As someone who's known you for about 29 minutes now,
I'm doing okay?
I agree.
Okay. But like when you look at wrestling, well, we are still on topic because wrestling, the world of WWE specifically, let's stay in there, is filled with people who we have seen do evil things.
Yeah.
Who we are now excited to see in the same way that we would be excited to see the Hound on Game of Thrones or Han Solo or, well, I don't know if Han Solo's ever done something evil, and Dexter. Any number of evil people.
Yeah.
However, the world around them, like when a great example of just how insane this is Roman Reigns' reign with the bloodline.
Yeah.
How many matches did he win clean?
Oh, I don't know if I've seen one.
I don't know if I've seen Roman Reigns just pin someone.
Yeah.
So Roman Reigns, let's look at the character. When we meet him, he's brought in as a mercenary from NXT to help protect CM Punk and to shield him and his world title.
Big dog.
However, very little personality beyond I'm the big guy comes out. In fact, the two other members of the Shield, the Schemer and the Maniac, have much clearer drawn lines.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Roman Reigns is betrayed in a way that shockingly, talk about continuity, has traumatized him and completely changed his character.
Yes.
After being betrayed, Roman took an imperative upon himself to be the good guy, to be the big dog, suffer and succotash.
That's right.
And tried to be an entertainer and tried to live for us. And we can only say that now because he wasn't positioned that way. Right. He was positioned as Superman.
Right.
Like just a great guy, which didn't make any sense for a guy who is a mercenary and he never did anything particularly good.
Yeah.
Like fighting the Wyatts was an imperative because the Wyatts were causing problems.
You could boil it down to more than likely Vince McMahon has a type because this is the Rock's story arc.
The blue chipper.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With the difference that Roman's reign is completely illegitimate. The bloodline reign, it's illegitimate. Illegitimate. And yet, how often is that brought up by other characters?
Never. In fact, quite the opposite. He's used as a feather in the cap anytime someone overcomes him.
Yep.
And not only that, but we bought into it. When our national nightmare finally ended and Cody was able to finish his story, the first thing we did is chant, "Thank you, Roman."
Yes. Yes. And well, that's the thing is like when you look at Roman now, they're doing a very odd thing with the character where he has yet to fucking apologize to anyone. And I don't know if they're just milking it or if they don't know how to write a damaged narcissist being forced into a position where they have to account for years of cruelty and lunacy, but they've basically totally avoided it.
Yeah.
And they do that all the time with characters. But do you think we narratively are meant to understand we're not supposed to think about that?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Are they asking us to forget like them? Or does us knowing that play in?
I don't know if I've thought of it until you brought it up. It's a great question. My gut reaction is that they poke us to see what they can get away with. Come here and we'll tell you the story from here. And then they wait to see how we react. And when the internet community or the fans
live community is powerful.
Live community especially goes, no. We didn't forget. As a matter of fact, I think part of that is you tell me what you know this much better than I, both from a screenwriting standpoint and probably from a wrestling standpoint. But I think that's a product of the limbo from a writing standpoint we kind of are in right now. I think that we held on to the bubble gum a little. So Cody finished his story. Jey Uso became a star. The consensus was that this kind of needed to come to an end and the storyline needed to evolve.
Yes.
But the merch sales were there and the kids are there. We've won them over. So they pushed the bubblegum angle for probably 3 to 6 months too long. And now the crowd went, not only no, or now we're cheering for bad guys.
Yeah.
We're just going to cheer for bad guys and boo the good guys.
So a lot of people say it's hard to write Superman because he's just good.
Yeah.
Which is like the laziest Oh, it's hard to write a sheriff in a Western? Are you insane? Like, just give him details. But when you say, like, from a writing perspective, like they held on to it too long, we cheer bad guys because when the bad guy arrives, we know something interesting is probably going to happen. Point. And when the good guy arrives, so often it is reactive.
Yeah.
And it is as a result of a bad guy taking initiative. And oftentimes, bad guys, usually I would say, bad guys are the motivators of storylines.
Yes.
And that can be very true in real life too.
Yeah.
That people acting, from will to power causes conflict. But take it a level, peel the frosting off.
Yeah.
If this was all real, saying the quiet part loud, this evil company will allow these sociopaths,
right,
these attention-starved, depraved, violent sociopaths to have a platform 3 to 5 times a week, an international platform, to harm each other.
Yes.
And often bad guys win.
Yeah.
To harm each other. That's Dystopia.
For entertainment.
Yes. That goes beyond CTE in football, right?
Yeah.
Because it's out loud gladiator fights.
Right. That's right. There's no grace. That's right. It's, if we're to believe it were real, it's injuries even more severe than football, and also they're being celebrated by one
and
party.
Inflicted with malice.
That's correct.
Inflicted with...
So we had it in the NFL a couple of years ago. There were coaches that were suspended for a bounty scandal where they were paying players to injure the other team's players, which is a whole other thing. But so coaches were suspended for that. In our context, the NFL would be paying those players to injure other players.
Yes.
The WWE is paying bad guys to injure their good guys.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. No, everyone's on payroll. Everyone gets paid more if they win.
Yes.
Which I believe is still the case.
I'm sure.
The winner's purse, which by the way, makes no fucking sense because like in a situation where like Kevin Owens was handcuffed to the thing, did you see that? It was the last man standing between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get the handcuff off.
Yeah.
So they counted fucking 10 and he won.
Yeah.
But he didn't win. In that case, if I were Kevin Owens, not only would I turn heel, I'd fucking quit.
Yeah.
Like, I won, I'm not being paid as much, and the company's celebrating that. But when you look at, authority pawns, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Triple H to some degree, all these people are congratulated by the company and celebrated by them and treated not as venerated figures, yes, as venerated figures.
Especially when Vince was in charge. Yeah.
So many decisions during Vince, like Hogan coming out and beating Yokozuna randomly after Brett. So many of those decisions expose this like naked worldview of an evil billionaire.
Yes.
Who thinks might makes right. And he knows so much in wrestling is, I know you're not supposed to say might makes right, and it's a more conservative mindset in the classical way of everyone here is out for themselves. Right. The rules only matter if you get caught breaking them.
Yeah.
And the whole company takes that mindset. And so like there's wrestlers who have iconic careers and are thought of as the best of all time. But if they were real athletes, they'd be some of the most hated people on the planet.
They would never would have made it for a career.
They would never would have made it for a career unless they were living in a dystopia that congratulated televised violence.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about sportsmanship. We're not talking about the UFC. Televised violence for millions, tens of millions of people. So now we come to the part where within the dystopia, so Undertaker, as I understand it,
favorite character for this type of discussion, by the way.
He's a good one. Undertaker, as I understand it, and this is my current understanding of Undertaker's lore as it stands in kayfabe. Undertaker was a young kid whose parents died in a house fire. The house fire burned the house to the ground. He survived. And during that house fire, maybe 3 little girls died.
Oh.
Unclear who they were, but something happened with 3 little girls.
Okay.
You're familiar with?
No.
He's here, all that shit.
No.
Like when he came back and you saw the weird like Okay.
Oh, I remember those videos. I didn't know that was the.
Well, what else would it be?
Yeah. Okay.
Just arbitrary Nightmare on Elm Street imagery?
Okay.
Yes. But I don't want to, it's the fucking annoying thing of you get into the lore of The Fiend.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much, God love Bray Wyatt, rest in peace, but how much of this is just stolen?
Oh, yeah.
How much of this has no thought behind it at all?
Yeah.
He looks like a guy who scares you at Halloween Horror Nights. Yeah. His powers are that he can create a pocket dimension in which he transforms into an actual monster, and then a separate pocket dimension where he can bring you and control reality.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't stay on him.
But still loses matches.
But still loses. Well, here we go. Let's look at The Undertaker and The Fiend together then. If you work at this company, what is your conception of what that is?
If you're dead, you're already dead, but also you're very badly hurt by an elbow drop. It's like
well, he's not. He's a necromancer. My understanding of the Undertaker's lore is that he's not literally dead. Is that he is a necromancer raised with dark magic to be a professional fighter for his sketchy adopted dad who had an affair with his mom when he was young. And this guy, this kid who his parents died in the house fire, he ended up growing to be this giant dude who this dude had brainwashed by telling him like, this urn is magic. Your parents' ashes are magic.
Gotcha.
Because that's what's in the urn. Undertaker's.
So he's more of a Michael Myers character.
He's like, well, at first, but then you give this brute, you get him into fighting competitions, he wins a bunch. Now he's on an internationally televised show. He's winning and winning and winning. But you can't hide the fact that this is a dark magic thing.
Sure.
Even though it's being like shown on TV. This guy starts a cult within the company. Yeah. By the way, many cults within wrestling, worth coming back to that.
Okay.
Wrestling has enabled and platformed so many cults.
Really?
The Dark Order, the Wyatt family.
Oh, true.
The fucking Ministry of Darkness. Yeah. The Brood.
Yeah.
They're all, well, the Brood, don't know if they were a cult. They might have just been Friday Night Vampire friends. But then this guy's dad is working for him, stepdad is working from professional capacity. But what Undertaker doesn't know, and Undertaker's real name is
Best job in the business, by the way.
Being Undertaker's dad?
Just
yeah. Well, it's a full-time job because you are also keeping sequestered with a mask on his face the 7-foot tall, even bigger brother who is a product of your affair with that kid's mother.
Yeah.
You're keeping him in a basement somewhere and telling him till he's in his late 20s that he has burns all over his face and forcing him to wear a custom-built mask.
Tremendous.
Okay, so when you bring in Kane to attack Undertaker in Hell in a Cell.
Somehow he's the bad guy. Yeah.
Somehow he's the bad guy, but also, what was the moment where this guy has to appear on TV, he has to go in the ring. So at some point, was Kane in a corporate office signing no compete and waivers and everything? And was Paul Bearer there helping him write? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, who would allow this?
That's right. That's right. Who is Kane's representation? Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy is a senator or whatever he is.
That guy?
That guy?
Glenn Jacob? I've seen him attack and chokeslam multiple women.
That's right. Oh, you thought his policy vote? You didn't appreciate that? That's what you're focusing on?
You should have seen his policy on Lita.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and so like little questions like that about how the magic interfaces, because how often is the magic, or the fact that like an easy example is under the ring, canonically, if you go under the wrestling ring, you go into a different dimension where everyone is midgets. Did you know that?
Oh, that makes sense.
So you go into a different dimension where everyone is midgets and everything's small. Have you seen this episode of Raw?
This is actually a storyline?
Yes.
I have not seen this.
So when DX came back and they were PGDX,
yes,
they had multiple storylines with Hornswoggle, which eventually led to all of them going under the ring and being transported to a different dimension.
They're tiny when they're there.
Yeah, well, because they went to Little People's Court,
gotcha,
which was a court made up of all dwarves. Except for the show has never addressed this again.
And rightfully so.
I think it would be fucking incredible if in the middle of a blood feud, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre kicks CM Punk, and then on the Titan, he goes into wrestler little person world.
With AI, it may be coming.
I mean, well, the thing is like, Do things like that matter? Are things like that canon? Should we care about those things? Or is it just this crazy dystopia world where we're meant to...
Well, you, especially speaking from the creative process, I would understand if they never bring up that storyline again, because I'm sure I know. You've written a ton of movies. You've written blockbusters. I've written about 450 goofy comedy skits for you, and an act. But sometimes you're just out of shit.
Yeah.
And if you've got to write 6 to 8 hours of television and storylines for all these people, sometimes you're just out of stuff. And I know you can relate to this. There is no feeling like first draft feeling.
Oh yeah. No.
So yeah.
Electricity.
Tiny universe under the world, and you put this thing and it's like, it kind of works. And then the next day you have a meeting and someone goes, "Hey, idiots, what about when we show the tables and they're full sized?"
One of those times you pull a table out from
the real tiny one,
and there's a guy on it going, a dwarf lawyer. What the hell? Well, I was going to work.
Yeah, exactly right. So I could see them having to abandon things like that, and I would be.
They
okay
also every single episode is like demoing live. Is this you want this maybe?
Yeah.
But by that same note, when you talk about like first draft stuff that then gets thrown out, there's all this stuff that they occasionally.
Yeah.
One of the big things people who don't watch wrestling can't get, and you'll know immediately what I'm talking about, is that wrestling holds back intentionally being smart whenever it can.
Yeah.
So the moments it's smart are like, premium TV. And usually when a smart thing happens in wrestling, and tell me if I'm capturing a mark out moment happens, it is because of a play on continuity that they don't usually acknowledge.
Yes.
I'll give you a made-up example of wrestlers A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. This year, wrestler A and C are both heels.
Okay.
They've been really bad for a while. Previously, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, wrestlers B and C had a moment together where they fought a bunch of bad guys when wrestler C was still a face. Now there's a match where wrestler A and wrestler B are fighting. And they have their own history, but that doesn't matter. Yeah. There comes a point in this high-stakes, emotionally driven, story-driven match where here comes wrestler C. And you're like, God fucking damn it. Wrestler B's matches always end in someone fucking them over.
Yeah.
And then the show goes, wait, where's he going? And you, before the show gets there, which is that feeling, always the best feeling when you're only an inch ahead.
Yeah.
You're not way ahead, you're an inch ahead. You, before the show get there, have this thought where suddenly neurons trigger in your brain and you remember, I remember when wrestler B and wrestler C were fighting those bad guys and everybody beat them up. So when the third guy comes out and you think he's going to do something bad, and then you realize, actually, he would probably, he saved him. And you're like, yeah. And it's like this huge thing. But they rely on us remembering shit for that.
And telling that story to, no, you don't understand. He did that because
this was planned the whole time.
Somewhat unrelated, but when Cena turned heel, the first thing
totally makes sense.
I went, and the first thing I said to my fiance is I said, so this guy he's a company guy it took this to further Cody's story because it was stale and it was out. And even this he'll do to push the narrative, and just the whole makes total sense the way the crowd has been
That's like the meta version of Cena's narrative as a performer.
And storyline.
Right in. Because we've been saying John Cena sucks for years and he smiled at us.
Yes.
And we've watched him. Yes, if this guy was real, all of those moments where he's like frustrating moments.
Yes.
Where he's like beating Carlito and Chris Masters in a handicap match, or just winning when he should be losing pretty much always for 12 years.
Sure.
11 years, 10 years. And then he started losing when he should be losing and winning when he should be winning, but mainly losing lately. That guy, legitimately, when that character says, I'm the best of all time, he's not talking, we know it's true. He's talking about the performance aspect and the meta narrative, but he's also fucking right.
Yeah.
We were mad at him because he beats everyone.
Right.
Don't you know this is real?
Yeah.
I beat everyone because I'm that good.
Yes.
And I try so hard because I am the best. Yeah. And I've had 12 years of you pissing in my mouth. Yeah.
And he's had the last 3-4 years of using what we do to him to be the arbiter of telling other wrestlers what they don't deserve. It's like he's come out a number of times and gone, they are in charge. And now he's saying, they tell me I suck and I am the best.
And I'm the best.
What are you?
Yeah. You guys don't fucking even matter. Did you see his promo on Punk last night?
I did.
I loved it, but again, the reality of wrestling occasionally has a thing.
And I wish it was on Raw because it looked like he was trying to kill.
Was it not on Raw?
It was on SmackDown last night.
Oh, it was on SmackDown. Yes.
And it looked like he was trying to match TV time. And I think it made the last 90 seconds clunky. And if it were on Raw, he could have just let it breathe or cut it off. And
crazy that they have 3 hours of programming and they're still cramped.
Yeah, right.
And there's still also guys who aren't featured at all.
Right.
And they've gone back to my favorite thing they do, which I think is a product of Triple H, which they stopped doing for a while, which is the thing where you go backstage and instead of just a person standing there with their logo, it's like a doc cam.
Yeah.
So if something's happening here, but not even a doc cam, it's like a Jim Jarmusch, Steven Soderbergh movie where it's like the camera's like, and what's happening with these people?
Yeah, that's right.
And then, that guy walked past where they're going over there. And I love that because it makes it feel like a contained world.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing, dystopic thing. What the fuck's going on in between these shows?
Are people back there? Yeah. That's right.
Because that's always presented. The Judgment Day is a clubhouse that they're always in. So they set that up every week.
Right.
Are they all hanging with each other?
Right.
Because sometimes there'll be this blood feud of like, I'm going to kill your family.
That's right. I've never stood that close to 6 of my friends in my life.
Yeah. During these 3 hours a week, I'm going to kill your family.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're cool.
We don't bump into each other at all back there.
Nobody bumps into each other.
Right.
And no, the people who do bump into each other is very like coordinated, when in reality, the more interesting way to write the show and something they never do, which is so, I don't want to say dumb. I don't want to insult every wrestling booker because Tony Khan has done this a little, but he's not. I think Tony Khan thinks wrestling is comics.
I could see that.
And clearly, Vince McMahon, Triple H, that aesthetic is wrestling generally as drama. Mm-hmm. I think my short wrestling isn't wrestling. The thing I will give it is that it changed the way front-facing people talk about wrestling now sounds like my end monologue at Wrestling Isn't Wrestling. Yeah. This is entertainment. This is cinema. This is a whole different thing. But there's sort of two different mindsets. But what almost never happens is random people who are friends who are at the bottom almost never are just casually people at the top.
Right.
Unless you count like the Dark Order and Hangman Page or like a few things like that.
Yeah.
There's this sense that the Tozawa Otis and Maxine show is meaningfully separate.
Yes.
From the CM Punk Cody Rhodes show.
Yes.
And that is a class divide, right?
Yeah.
In some way within it.
But a weird thing is there will be interlopers that pass through the Otis and Tozawa. Jey Uso had like a 2-week arc where he was the protector of them, but now they're gone. It's very Saved by the Bellish, but Screech, but then Screech Screech is in a locker for 90% of the episodes of the season,
and then he comes out for 10 minutes of the 3 hours Saved by the Bell.
Yeah,
and you're like, oh yeah, he's still here.
That's right.
Wasn't Chad Gable physically and verbally abusing him?
That's right.
No, he's a luchador.
That's it.
He's a luchador. Okay, so this is what I was going to about Cena's promo, where the lines of what reality is in wrestling gets blurred. Sometimes a finishing move is, within the context of a wrestling match, a finishing move is not deadly, but certainly enough to knock you down and make you not want to stand up for more than 3 seconds, right? Except for often, within the context of a match, a single finishing move is not enough.
Yep.
Whereas last night, CM Punk ate an AA through a table and then insanely, on camera, laid with his eyes closed sleeping in bye-bye mode.
Yes. 10 minutes.
For 10 minutes, as John Cena ran down every horrible thing ever.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen that in matches where someone takes a bump and it's like, okay, that person's dead now.
Yeah.
And then if they come back, you're like,
Yeah.
But have you noticed that if you're wearing your street clothes, finishing moves put you to sleep?
Yes, that's right. Or a microphone.
Or a microphone.
Yeah.
But like, where does that fit in? What does a finishing move do to you?
Yeah, as opposed to what does it do to you now? And another weird thing is like if there's a pistol fight,
Right.
the pistol does the same thing to us that it did to our great, great, great grandparents.
Yeah.
However, if you receive a super kick now, it might not even knock you into the ropes as opposed to previously.
You might not go off your feet
You might not go off your feet.
to set you up for the 3 more super kicks in the knee.
As opposed to previously where it was probably the most vicious finisher and the closest to lifelike finisher that maybe that there was at that time. You know, if you're looking at a big leg or a rock bottom or something like that, we watch the UFC, fights actually end all the time from head kicks.
Yep.
It's the one thing that actually consistently, if you watch 5 UFC fights, 1 to 3 of them are likely going to end in head kicks or the end is it. But now, not only do the old finishers are kind of just barely a move, but the new finishers, you're right, is now sometimes one of them knocks you out for the night. Sometimes five of them doesn't do enough to pin you, but being hit with a belt knocks you out for multiple minutes. I don't know what to do with that. And I think from a storyline standpoint, they've pushed it a little further than they should have on the finishers.
Who do you think killed the super kick?
I don't know.
Was it Shelton Benjamin?
I don't know. I was out of it whenever that would have. So my reintroduction really into how much it's used now, what is the Usos. So I don't know who killed it.
I mean, the Usos turned it into like
It's brutal.
press X to super kick.
Yeah.
It's baseline move.
Yeah.
And then the Bucks also. Indie wrestling had a lot to do with, I don't know if you ever watched any PWG. So, you know, the style in AEW is much faster.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's great.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I'm a Dave Meltzer. And sometimes that sucks. And I hate it. And I'm Jim Cornette.
Okay.
But it goes from minute to minute. But when you say that, from an enjoying the show standpoint,
Yeah.
how many finishers in one match is too much? Is there an upward limit?
If we're talking WrestleMania, I get that. This is all out. I'm willing to take, you look at it like a classic boxing match. There are boxing matches that champions have decided, I will take the back end years off of my career and possibly my life to win this fight. Mm-hmm. WrestleMania, I get that. But if we're talking a typical Peacock pay-per-view or your typical Monday Night Raw title match, if you're taking more than 2 finishing moves, by definition, it's almost not a finishing move.
It's transitioned.
It's transitioned.
And, you know, what people always say is, people say this is like one of the things Reddit, and when I was back in my day in wrestling forums pretending to be a girl because we get people to respond to my posts more. And I didn't know how.
I have a bit about this. I was 11 years old in wrestling chat rooms trying to meet girlfriends, so we may have talked to each other on there for all I know.
Oh God, I didn't talk to any 11-year-olds. I hope. Oh God. But no, the one thing people always say is, you know, AJ Styles should get more pins with the so-and-so, or Sami Zayn should get some pins with the Blue Thunder Bomb, just to make those false finishers mean more.
Yeah.
Whereas, like a lot of times, if Cody hits a Cody Cutter, you can just in your head say 2.
Yep.
And a lot of times, even watching the dynamism of how matches are sketched out. Have you ever heard the wrestling story structure thing?
No.
The heat and the shine and all that?
I don't know if I have.
Okay, so a guy named Chris Hero explained this to me in a cafe. He was a wrestler.
I know that name, Chris Hero.
He's an incredible mind and really nice guy. But I had a meeting with him because I wanted to know, I was working with WWE, I believe, at the time, and I wanted to know more.
Awesome.
I was a consultant. They ignored everything I said.
Still awesome.
It was awesome.
Still awesome.
It was awesome. It made me very happy.
Still on the group project.
Yeah, it was really fun. But I just sat in LA and sent emails. I'm not sure what they ever did of mine except for 2 things. And, I'm not sure if they would have had those ideas organically. But, I got to meet a lot of wrestlers, which was cool. I wish I'd been older and more mature and made a better impression on most of them.
Sure.
But, you know,
Such is life.
Such is life. So Chris Hero explained to me that wrestling matches actually follow a narrative story structure, not unlike a screenplay or the hero's journey, where most matches, one-on-one matches, are comprised of notable segments. You're not going to be able to unhear this once I say it.
I've lived my whole life. I always take it back to grammar, innately having an innate use of things that I don't know the background rules to. So I appreciate you articulating this, so I finally understand what's going on in my brain. Because like I said, I go on this ESPN show. I talk about wrestling 50% of it, and we do predictions. And I say from a storyline standpoint, it doesn't make sense that blank.
Yes.
But I don't know what I'm talking about. You know it. You grew up. Look, I know how to structure my sentences to make them look perfect. I couldn't tell you what a gerund is. I barely know a subject and a predicate. You know the rules of...
Gerund is the ing that moves the verb into the present tense.
You know the rules of storytelling. I've got the Rick Rubin-esque understanding of story, but I could use what you're about to tell me.
So it's fucked with me. Thank you, first of all, because I prefer to engage with story more holistically. Mm. But this is, so Chris Hero told me that basically matches are structured to begin with what's called a shine, which is the babyface, the good guy, or the more good guy, begins with a series of flashy offense that shows he or she is better at actually wrestling than the heel.
Gotcha.
During the shine, there's something called the cutoff. Now, there's multiple types of cutoff, but it's basically the heel ends the shine.
Okay.
And the most common way to do a cutoff is some sneaky, cheaty thing. Now, for a sneaky or devious heel who's maybe not evil, it might be as simple as moving out of the way and the face goes running into the turnbuckle.
Gotcha.
And then the heel goes. Then begins what's called the heat. The heat is the portion of the match where the heel is in control, which you'll notice, now that I've said this, is 80% of 80% of wrestling matches.
Yeah.
It is the heel in control and the babyface mounting a series of what are called comebacks that are again edited with cutoffs. So it's a constant sense of build momentum, lose momentum, build momentum, lose momentum, drawing you in narratively and introducing more and more elements until finally you enter a sequence of events called the finish. The finish is the unique part of your match, and of course, we all know, is often the part of the match containing the most drama and excitement, in which simultaneously a violent physical message is, or intellectual message is sent, but also a story message is sent that is powerful, that makes you go, and that's the moral of this match.
Gotcha.
This guy was faster than that guy. And when you look at wrestling like that, it's I forget what brought us onto this. This is so fun, man.
It's a good time, yeah.
But what's crazy is that so many of the stories exist within this narrative that whenever they innovate it or subvert it, we get excited.
Right.
One of the greatest matches, probably the best match I've ever seen live. I saw two matches that subvert this narrative completely.
Talking Suplex City?
Suplex City, Lesnar versus Cena, where at the beginning, the heel hits a finisher.
Yeah.
And the face not only never recovers, he's unable to mount even one meaningful comeback.
Yeah.
Which is subverting the whole format, and you felt it while you were watching it, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then the other one is, do you remember Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar?
No.
You gotta
I'll be watching it tonight.
I'll
be watching it tonight.
I don't want to say anything.
Please.
The thing that's worth knowing about it is it was supposed to be Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles.
Oh, fantastic.
And that Thursday on SmackDown, Daniel Bryan had a match with AJ Styles for the championship and had turned heel by hitting him with a low blow to win.
Fantastic.
So suddenly it's Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar with 4 days to emotionally get ready for this.
Yeah.
And the audience is unclear on whether Daniel Bryan's a heel or a face.
Yeah.
Because Lesnar's a heel.
Yeah.
And also look at him and then look at Daniel Bryan.
That's right.
Who do you want to win?
That's right.
Wait till you see what they choose story-wise to do with this match.
Okay.
Because it's like, it's as subversive as like Reservoir Dogs.
Okay.
In terms of like structure, Pulp Fiction, like I hate to give two Tarantinos. Let me find a third.
It's like you don't know who you're rooting for as you're watching it kind of deal.
You know who you're rooting for, but then the characters are in character. It's like Suplex City if Suplex City had more character work.
Oh, interesting.
And you realize very quickly, once things start happening, which takes a while,
Yeah.
that you're about to watch a type of match and a feeling of a match that capitalizes on the strengths of these two guys.
Got you.
And is built to capitalize on the strengths of Spider-Man versus Dr. Octopus.
Fantastic. And goes back to what you were saying before about withholding intelligent moments. By the way, which is the true sign of intelligence is not to try to exert it constantly, but to exert it when it's most impactful.
Know when to keep your mouth shut.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, Lil Wayne, a director named Josh Trank once quoted Lil Wayne to me, and it took me like 3 days to understand what he meant.
Because he was on syrup when he said it?
I mean, I think Josh is sober right now.
No, I'm talking about any Lil Wayne quote.
He might have been then. He a talented cat, but he said real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Yes.
And God, that's true. And then years later, I learned I had a 10-inch tall rainbow mohawk.
Fantastic.
And I was a TV showrunner.
Awesome.
And I learned this lesson where I'm a silly guy, but look at how I'm dressed right now. This is how I dress now.
Very good.
Whereas I used to wear like a rainbow shirt and rainbow mohawk, and I'm a silly guy. And the intelligence thing, how you portray your intelligence, is I learned, and I always say this, if you act like a clown, but you look serious, people will probably take you serious.
That's right.
If you look like a clown, but you act serious, and you're stand on business and you're there, present, people will treat you serious.
Yeah.
But if you look like a clown, and you act like a clown, you are a clown.
That's right. People will believe you.
People will believe you.
Yeah.
If you show people who you are, people will be like, yeah, this guy's nuts. And like when you look at WWE, how we're asked to process the world, who we are, when we are all, like you said, who we boo or cheer changes.
Yeah.
When we are emphatically singing the songs of people who then get on the mic and say they hate us.
Yes.
It's dystopic, again, because the implication is that we have accepted nihilism as our go-to viewpoint.
Yes.
That these people's actions don't matter.
Right.
And it's not like these guys got like canceled or anything like that. They're trying to kill someone on TV.
Right. That's right.
They're trying to murder someone on TV.
But it's not lawless. We have a code. We just don't know what it is.
Yes.
Or how we apply it.
Vibes code.
I have a question for you on this because here's another phase. There's a whole set of rules that we as spectators understand. You talked about theft earlier. It's encouraged to steal other wrestlers' things, but also there's a whole other set of rules and laws and mores inside of the ring in the match where we will. I was watching last Monday, and I said to my fiance, I don't know for sure. If I have to guess, I'm not sure that Stephanie Vaquera works entirely safely in the ring, and I think Asuka and Raquel are giving her some stiff ones in there right now. Receipts, that's a whole other set of. So you're watching, we're watching fiction versus we're watching two different realities at the same time
at once.
A reality that's actually happening, plus a reality that we're adopting, plus a third reality, which is how they're interacting with each other outside of both characters somehow at the same time.
Yes. Wow. Well said. And also, they've gotten good at playing us with that.
Yes.
Ooh, that one looked real.
Yes.
And you find out 10 years later in a podcast, haha, we're best friends.
Yeah.
He fucks my wife. I sit in the cuck chair. We love each other. Well, that's always like whenever there's this, whenever in interviews, because kayfabe's shattered now, but whenever in interviews, Rollins or Punk or any of those guys go, I legitimately don't like him.
Yeah.
I don't like him.
Soulmates.
I'm not sure if they're soulmates, but if I really didn't like a guy, generally it's because I don't trust them to be real.
Right.
When you're in a relationship, whether it's professional or a friendship or a romantic relationship or performance relationship like they have.
Sure.
In 10,000 years, everything's about trust. In 10,000 years, if I sincerely didn't like someone, I would not trust them to stomp my head.
Right.
You're right that we watch it on two different levels, but some of the stuff we see backwards contradicts the things we know to be true.
True. But the other weird thing is, tell me what you think. Is there some complication to humanity there where they're really living as 3 or 4 different people? Like, I've got comedians that there's certain shades that we don't like each other, but we do. And it's not a frenemies thing. We're bitter rivals in some aspects, but we actually love each other like brothers. I've met people in comedy that if I'm at a club, I would avoid like the plague. But if we were at an airport, I would gravitate to that person.
Can I ask you what's the line for you there?
You just said something very insightful about knowing who the person is. Like you said, I can meet you where you are or put you in the box that I need to based on who you are. But if that's fluid, if that's fluid, it's dangerous and I can't be around it.
Well, because it raises this question always, and this is true in wrestling and everything, is who's operating in bad faith? Because clearly within the world of WWE, every single character is operating in bad faith. The people who are temporarily faces are people we've seen be heels.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes is unique because his story as a person and his story as a character align so closely, or at least narratively, have been made to appear to align closely. Like, for instance, like what we're actually looking at, I hate to bring it to Game of Thrones, but this is what I think Tony lacks, my old friend Tony Khan. But the thing Tony lacks that's comic book thinking, as opposed to the way WWE works, which is more mythic, accidentally mythic or legendary thinking, is that the story, I'm going to put it in a different TV show. If this was mythic or a fairy tale, Cody's father is a knight from a lower royal family that had previously been conquered. Yeah. However, the king, who's a prick, the king who runs everything, gave that knight a lot of opportunities, but never really let him be his chief vassal and just relied on him because he was tough and strong. And even when he became old, he still gave him opportunities. But keep in mind, that knight is kind of a philanderer. He's kind of a fuck up. And he has a kid, a son, named Dustin, who wants to be in the king's kingdom. But it turns out this son is crazy and weird and puts on face paint. And the asshole king loves it.
Yeah.
Because he's like, see, that knight's family was never that special.
Yeah.
They were never that important. Years later, that knight's other son with a different woman comes into the kingdom. At first, he can't find his way. He tries to train with a brutal, tough, like sort of low-level thug, hardcore Holly, and he tries to train and get some grit, but ultimately he can't get ahead and becomes frustrated. However, a knight whose father is actually a lot like his father, but a little less, was kind of a cowboy. They called him Cowboy Bob Orton. That guy's son, Randy, came in just like him. Yeah. And he says, I have an opportunity. I was in a group called Evolution and they turned on me. I'm sick of being with people who think they're my superiors. I need backup. What I really need is a legacy. So he gets 2 other knights' kids, well, technically 5, but we're not counting any of the Samoans. He gets Cody and Ted. And then if you remember during Legacy, do you remember when Randy RKO'd Dusty? Mm-hmm. And then Cody like got mad, but was so cucked and psychologically damaged that he couldn't do anything.
Gangs of New York.
Gangs of New York. One of the biggest pops I've ever heard for Cody getting ready to hit Randy. Yeah. Never went anywhere. Never did anything. Randy eventually beat both guys at once. This young knight is betrayed by his basically elder duplicate, Randy Orton. And things fall apart. First, he becomes obsessed with, I need to get myself over by entertaining people. So he becomes handsome and focuses in on him being handsome. But that's all bubbled around insecurity and fear. And the fact that he's a freak from a family of freaks.
Right.
And eventually, when his nose is broken, he becomes obsessed with the idea that he's hideous. Finally, he realizes I'm never going to get anywhere. And his thing becomes he has a mustache and he exists. For a year, 2 years, this knight kicks around the kingdom. He is not special. His relationship to his father no longer means anything. Until finally, he gets fed up and rejoins his freak older brother and just gives up and becomes a freak. Lo and behold, he leaves the company.
Yep.
He's out of the kingdom. He's exiled for years and years. And he travels to Japan and becomes a great warrior. Yeah. And he meets all these different warriors. And eventually he starts his own kingdom.
The warrior.
He becomes a king of a realm where there's 5 kings, and a new billionaire, a new king on a different continent makes him the #1 guy. And then on the tail of that, he returns the prodigal son to the old kingdom. Literally, when they say finish the story, they're talking about a fairy tale.
Yeah.
He arrives to defeat the chosen one of the asshole king. And then while he's on top, the asshole king is deposed for a cruel affair with a maiden, and vanishes from the kingdom.
Yeah.
And he has now become, the reason his story is so satisfying is there's a narrative thread that goes all the way through it.
Yeah.
And it's with his real life too. It goes all the way through it. And I don't know who Cody Rhodes is personally. I can't imagine he and I have much in common. But we do have some things in common. And the thing that's incredible about him is at no point in that guy's career was anyone like, that's just Dusty Rhodes' son.
Right.
It was always like, what's this guy going to do? Who is this guy?
Yeah.
Where's he going?
That sounds like, tell me if there's a better analogy. That sounds like Jon Snow on steroids.
All epic heroes share certain things because Moses had that same thing.
Yeah.
So many. I mean, in some ways, there's so many different. That's such a good. Jon Snow's such a good comp. But even lyrically, from like a pieces of the story perspective,
Yeah.
like the Count of Monte Cristo, fucking. I'm blanking, which is embarrassing because I should be able to think of 200. Fucking Luke Skywalker. I'm heir to an empire, but my dad is subservient to this guy who's cruel.
Evil, yeah.
And it's led to the destruction of my life.
Yep.
And I'm never in a direct fight with the guy who's evil. Because that's the best thing about Star Wars. So many people talk about Return of the Jedi and Star Wars. And what people forget about Star Wars is the main character does not beat a bad guy in that movie. He does not. He loses to a wild animal. He loses to his dad. Like, ultimately, that victory for Luke is so emotionally built. Or for Jon Snow, if his ending had been better. What were you going to ask me about Game of Thrones?
I will ask you that, but it reminds me of as a spectator, a couple of years ago, I watched The Matrix for the first time, or not for the first time, but it's
for the first time in a long time.
In a long time, it's a 2.5 hour movie, but until the last 3 minutes, it is incredibly frustrating. He never embraces who we already all know he is until it's like. Maybe 4 minutes of the movie.
How satisfying is that?
And it's like, oh man, it's triumphant. So, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
From a storyline standpoint.
Yeah, hit me, man. I love talking about Game of Thrones from a storyline standpoint.
And it could be because I'm a basic story viewer, but if someone hasn't watched it and they say, should I watch it? Knowing what you know now, should I watch all 8 seasons or whatever it is? I say, well, I started watching it during the 7th season and then watched it all back in 1 month and watched the 8th season, and I loved it until it broke my heart. I can't tell you not to watch it because of how good it is, but I would recommend you stop watching after the Night's War. And just don't watch the last 2 episodes. If you
the long night, the
long night. Yeah, I think from a storyline standpoint, considering where they did cut it off, if they cut it off there, I felt happy with crescendo. Story ended enough and left the door open if it was to be completed. But the last 2 episodes crushed me.
So what's the question? What do you? I now will not recommend Game of Thrones to people.
I was going to ask, as an expert screenwriter.
Thank you for saying that.
How they finished the story Even if it's just from, because like if someone talks comedy to me, I can say, yeah, that joke's not for me. I don't. But from an X's and O's standpoint, you can't say it's not good mathematically. Like I'll ask people, comics that have been at it for a while or that haven't. I'll say, look, how much time? Or new comic? They'll say I have 20 minutes. I'll go, no. I've got. To be honest with you, I can do an hour and 40 minutes, but if you ask me to be completely honest, if the crowd hates your guts from the time you get on stage.
You want to get off. You want to get the fuck out of there.
If the crowd, and I've done shows where the crowd can't stand me, I've got about 50 minutes that over the last 11 years, you might just hate, but you cannot say this is not good. So from a screenwriting standpoint, is it good, or are my suspicions correct that they just got another gig and they didn't wrap up a story, even from an X's and O's standpoint, in a defensible way? I'd love to hear what you think about the actual play.
So that's what everyone says online, is that the guys got another job and they wanted to rush out of it, and they could have had 2 seasons, but they said no. And you hear that again and again. So it's a twofold answer, which is when you build an epic story with a linear, continuous narrative that relies on character details as well as massive political and military choices. Because that's the biggest strength of Game of Thrones, is really these people are, we don't ultimately in Game of Thrones spend much time with the common people. Right. We just don't across all the seasons. There are outsiders we spend time with, but the common people are usually just people we kill. Yeah. And so we're watching the lives of incredibly important people, and then narratively backdropped behind that is, it's the wonderful thing that a lot of really great epics do and large-scale stories do, where you have the conflicts between people in the foreground, but then somewhere in the background, and the message of the interactions between human characters is all, life's really complicated. This guy fucks his sister and tried to kill a little kid. But he has a lot of trauma. Yeah. It's not like he wants to be that way. And honestly, that thing he did where he killed the king that's been portrayed as like this bad thing was actually not only the right thing, it was literally a suicide, because he would be viewed, it was a murder-suicide. He would be viewed as the Kingslayer forever. Yeah. And he knew that while he was doing it. And the fact that he got off as clean as he did is because he's a rich kid. Yeah. But everyone fucking hates him. And his life's not easy. And the better we get to know Jaime, the more we see that the details of this character make him a character worth caring about. Same for the Hound. Same for even the darker characters, right?
We're already coming back to wrestling by accident. Just cheering for the
bad guy.
Punting the head and forgiving.
Well, it's okay, but that's the thing about, now we're back to like Immanuel Kant, which is there a universal moral law? Like, what even is a bad person? Yeah. Like, and then you get into things that I don't want to touch with a 40-foot pole, like, a bad person in certain fundamentalist countries is somebody who is gay or respects women. And a bad person in most societies is someone who lies. Except for there are plenty of people I know who lie and are not evil.
The noble lie.
Or even just lies that are like, on a micro scale, human interaction becomes so multitudinous that it's hard to analyze anything.
Right. I was just talking about this week. Is in certain social constructs, what would the truth do to hurt someone's feelings for sport with no benefit?
Yes. There's such complicated things we're getting into here. But we went off on a thing. But these character details and human details are then juxtaposed in the background. There is this more utilitarian good versus evil, dualistic worldview. There's a Manichaean, I believe it's called a Manichaean worldview, that good versus evil is happening. So in Game of Thrones, it spends so much time going, a guy like Bronn might be your favorite character. This person might be bad, but you kind of love him. Mm-hmm. And actually, this person's making this big political decision for personal shitty reasons. Mm-hmm. I hate him even more. But then meanwhile, back there somewhere is an army of killer zombies.
Yeah.
That, to our knowledge, is just evil. And the shattering, heartbreaking, butt-fucking eye-meltingly bad element of the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones is that it gives up on that and goes, actually, all of this has been in service of nothing.
Yeah.
And actually, all of this was kind of meaningful, and you were actually wrong about who the main characters were. You're actually wrong about that. Because, actually, Game of Thrones is, there's no good and evil in the world. It's actually all gray. And that's why Dany actually, if you paid attention, she's been bad the whole time. And it's like, no, she hasn't, you pricks.
Right.
Don't lie to me. I know who's bad.
Yeah.
The fucking zombie army.
Yeah.
They fight for 1 episode, and everybody says this, but from a writer's perspective, everything you do in a story like that is building a Jenga tower. You're building this Jenga tower to get an emotional and story and intellectual payoff that will be satisfying. So when you are 7 seasons in and they go like this, forget that Jenga tower. I've been working on this one. And you're like, that's a different Jenga tower.
Yeah.
The top half of this one doesn't fit on the bottom half of that.
So I already feel like we're destined to speak with each other. I've had a joke about my life being a Jenga tower for 6 years. I haven't been able to finish it yet. It's my crowning thesis. I love the analogy.
You haven't been able to finish the joke
I haven't
yet?
been able to finish.
There's an irony there.
I haven't been able to finish I know. I can neither build it nor destruct it. But I will. So, but and I love the analogy. And also, you're right. I never thought of this, but if that war continued more like it should have, complicates it even further, that more than likely the army would start to increase by being constructed by your former loved ones.
Yes, by characters, and we would have moments involving encountering zombie versions of our characters, and we would have moments that explore what the fuck are the White Walkers? Why are they leaving that symbol there?
Yeah.
Why are they putting that symbol? What do they want? Who is that guy? Oh, he's some guy who got stabbed in the chest by the little green people. I don't know what that means. And like, it's, you look at one of the greatest, most subversive storytelling choices of all time, right? Cody losing to Roman.
Yes.
But contextually, what's great about the finish the story match, storytelling wise, is what that match actually is about is the end of the bloodline. Because Jay and Jimmy lost to Kevin and Sami the night prior.
Yeah.
And then here's all those characters fighting for Cody. But the truth is Roman just has one more sleeve card. He has fucking Solo and is one more sleeve card. He has one more person than you do. And at the end of the day, there's not enough gun, just like there wasn't for everyone else.
Yeah. And yeah, good. In the simplistic terms, good beats good. Hope springs eternal, and good beats evil, because eventually
that's the thing is there's that promise when Cody lost, but that promise was okay with us, and people weren't as mad as you'd think they'd be, and were more just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because you had set up the night prior, Jay and Jimmy lost.
Yeah.
And in the Bloodline storyline is the one place they really pay attention to continuity, other than Sami being a heel.
Yeah.
They were like, Jay and Jimmy losing and then Roman winning and being totally exposed by Cody is gonna have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And then it did. And so by the time we got to the next Bloodline match, Roman barely had anybody.
Yeah.
To the degree that he needed The Rock.
Yeah.
And The Rock got fucking chokeslammed by The Undertaker.
I was going to say.
And it was literally, if there's ever been a Deus Ex Machina in wrestling that was earned,
Yeah.
where just God comes down and goes, no, actually, Cody wins. Cody wins, actually. Yeah. I can't believe they never, during all this Vince McMahon getting, sorry,
Please.
we're so ADHD. We're two ADHD guys in a studio.
We warned you.
Yeah, 3 men, no brain.
Yeah.
And
the third one is just a amalgamation of our multiple personalities.
Ever even end up?
So while you're looking, I'll tell you though that I watched the clip of earlier this week of the Jey Uso to Jimmy Uso, you're out and I'm out too super kick. just to what a powerful moment. Just to when he
so beautiful.
And the crowd pop is when he says you're out, and you feel the
crowd go, oh no.
It's like when, like you said, as a spectator, we know it's coming and it comes, but then when we're surprised too, just like when Paul Heyman does low blow to CM Punk, and we go, yeah, we knew that was coming, and then when he does low blow to Roman too, and I at least me, I was like, no way, to feel the reward of knowing that was going to happen, but then still be tricked.
It's being an inch ahead and then getting full. It's the level even above the thing I was talking about earlier, where you're an inch ahead and they're 2 feet ahead of you.
That's right.
And those moments are rare and beautiful and as high art as can happen. And I think one of the reasons Game of Thrones season 8 from a creative Jenga tower standpoint fails so completely is because a lot of those, when I'm writing anyway, I'm not a showy screenwriter. Okay. And I don't like writing prose. I'm okay at it, but I'm not good at it. And people have to be really good at this skill to write prose. But you are constantly setting up expectations to subvert. You are constantly introducing elements and patterns, whether it be a number, an emotion, a visual, that later will be, here's a nibble, here's the bite, here's the whole thing.
Okay.
You're constantly, every sentence is that.
Yeah.
Setting up, and maybe that's just the way I write, but I'm constantly setting people up to want to keep reading.
Gotcha.
And to want to, if they're watching the movie, something new happened. They want to keep watching. One of the reasons Game of Thrones 7 and 8 fail so completely is it stops doing that. All the things that we are ready to be subverted by don't happen.
Yeah.
Enough even to be subverted. Jon Snow does not get in a sword fight with the Night King. Even if he lost and Arya saved him.
Yes.
Which would be a better moment.
Yes.
Because it would be like, oh, Arya. And Arya did that. Even if that happened, it would have felt better than Arya just killing the Night King.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we're ready. Even if Jon Snow and Dany hooked up and then instantly turned on each other.
Yes.
And the last season became face versus face. Babyface versus babyface.
Right.
For the Sami Zayn versus Cody Rhodes for the fate of Hyrule or wherever the fuck they're called. I forgot what Game of Thrones is called now.
Oh, God. I do too now.
What the fuck? What'd they do to us?
I don't know.
It's not Hyrule. It's not Midgard.
That's got to be our ADHD brain too. There's only so much.
Westeros.
Yes.
And that's the other thing. That's the other thing. They go, hey, in Essos, there's Asian people in a city of magic, and it's way over there. So are we ever going to see that? No.
But just know about it.
Nope.
Just know about it.
Nope. You know, south of here in Sithorios, there's tons of dragons and all different types of dragons and giant ogres and lizard people. And you're like, why are you going to, don't mention that and not show me. Take me there. Yeah. I've been with this show for 6 seasons. I can see an elf. Yeah. I won't think it's bad.
I have watched 89 hours of your program. Yeah. Can you at least let one character be fulfilled or happy?
Can you give me cookie?
Anything?
Can you give me cookie?
I get it. No one's happy. Everyone's alone. Great. I'm glad. This is a great thing to spend 85 hours on.
Is the Miz evil?
I would say no, but it's a more, I can't tell if it's a sinister goodness or a latent evil. Like there's something, it crosses the uncanny valley where it's almost portraying good guy, but in an unlikable way.
Guy who thinks he should be the good guy.
Guy who thinks he should be the good guy.
Irritated that you don't think so.
Guy striving for something we don't think he deserves, which touches our sense of personal injustice for no reason. He's doing nothing wrong. You know, when you look at somebody who gets an opportunity, like especially in comedy, why did he get that? They're not doing anything wrong, but it touches something in you to go, man.
Oh, it's one of the things I've let go of, and I'm lucky that I've been able to let it go because I know exactly what you're talking about, was resenting other people's success.
Sure.
And resenting the idea that, which is stupid because I started this podcast by saying like, this is not a meritocracy. There's no way to predict success. the essence of success in entertainment, which WWE is essentially a part of, is that people are talking about you.
Right.
So like when you look at a character like The Miz, what's evil about him is metatextually that he wants to be our favorite guy.
Yes.
And will take any shortcut to get there.
Made himself a superhero version of himself.
And we resent him for it.
Yes.
Even though he really did it.
Yes, that's right.
And whereas what makes a character like, let me think, who's the most evil character ever in wrestling? Who's the darkest, most evil character? Is it Triple H? I mean, on the
if you go by
stuff,
timeline,
you
body,
can do all different stuff.
Yeah,
but
I mean, there have been people who are just more outwardly evil with immediacy, but probably over the long scope when you play out his story. Triple H took over the company.
Tyrion Lannister
Through
Tywin Lannister.
Took over the company through the founder's daughter.
In real life and in because as a guy, I don't know about him. I wish he wouldn't post so many pictures of RFK. I enjoyed meeting him when I met him. He liked wrestling as wrestling. It made me glow with pride.
I got worried. So I've worried about Triple H's character only recently when during the Hall of Fame induction, he gave himself a musical entrance and not Stone Cold or Bret Hart, who was directly next to him. And I went, this guy may have they're the spikes. They're the spikes.
About the character. Because what Triple H appears to be is Michael Eisner, is a guy who, an ersatz Michael Eisner, a guy who takes over an entertainment company and reshapes it to be what he thinks is modern and now and has wanted that power the whole time. In this case, Vince McMahon. There's a couple of heads of Disney in between here, but Vince McMahon's Walt Disney because he is.
Sure.
He's evil Walt Disney.
Sure.
Oh, wait. Are we? What's our time?
Oh, snap. We need to do this again.
Yeah, that was super fucking fun. That was super
We need to do this
fun.
again.
Yeah, we got in, and we can have looser topics next time, but I really enjoyed that. That was so fun.
Thanks, man. This is
and we hit everything in there. We pitched Game of Thrones. We hit comedy circuit and cancel culture and every different thing. We hit so many different things within that.
Yeah.
But I guess wrestling incorporates all these things because it is like you said, the nth extreme of interpersonal relationships.
And there's no off season. So while you're watching Game of Thrones, there's gonna be 3 WWE events that week.
God, I love it when something big happens on a Raw.
Oh yeah.
When Gunther fucking got the title.
Yeah.
I wish he would have shaken Jey Uso's hand after.
Yeah.
Just because we got to heels.
And it would have fit his progression and storyline.
100%.
He did it with we didn't shake his hand, but he gave McAfee like a nod.
Yes. He gave McAfee a nod and he didn't give it to Uso. Mm-hmm. But also, where's Imperium? Why aren't we making Gunther more interesting? Okay.
All right.
This is our time. Chris?
Dude.
An absolute pleasure. I'm sorry, Cass. I assume Casanova's drunk or hungover somewhere, covered in his own blood.
Well, we ain't going anywhere.
We'll have a three-way with him. Triple. Okay, we talked so much that we just ran out on time. So if this is an abrupt ending, that's what she said. And you can follow me at Up to My Knees 1985 on Instagram. No threads, no Twitter. And Chris?
At Chris Flail on Instagram. Also no threads, no Twitter.
His Instagram's a lot better than mine because it's funnier. The outro note is thank you for watching. If this inspired any thoughts in you, please share them below, whether they be about wrestling, Game of Thrones, or any of the other 2 billion things we discussed today. I hope you have a beautiful day and a beautiful life. But most of all, I hope you follow me on Instagram. Superman, the Starlight Emperor comes out July 4th. Take a look. Bye-bye, kids.